Today, we are considering one of history's greatest turning points, the creation of nuclear power.
This is a truly revolutionary set of events, as it will drastically change world warfare, create international tensions still in place today, and propose an alternate, cleaner source of energy.
The 1930s were a time of great economic depression, during which international tensions arose. September 1st, 1939, ushered in the beginning of a highly destructive war, World War II. But as we shall discover, times of war brought forward great technological advancements in the physics of atoms, and more specifically, the nucleus.
In 1905, the first step towards the discovery of nuclear power was taken. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, which stated that energy equals mass times speed of light squared, explained that mass could theoretically be converted into energy. 33 years later, this theory is put into use by Enrico Fermi, an Italian-American immigrant who found an isotope of uranium that was highly unstable and would therefore decay. This isotope was named uranium-235.
Einstein's theory was clearly proven in 1939 when Lisa Meitner, Otto Hahn, and Fritz Strassmann, German and Austrian physicists, successfully split the nucleus of a uranium atom. This process is referred to as nuclear fission and is the basis of the soon-to-be-built nuclear bomb.
Though the US proved to be against Japan and Germany all along, it will only decide to join the Allies in World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
In the midst of World War II, the United States desperately needed a new advancement in the field of weapons. Many of the scientists involved in the discovery of nuclear fission, and thus their ideas, had immigrated to the United States due to political complications. Enrico Fermi and his colleagues recognized the extreme potential that nuclear chain reactions had, and this soon led to the beginning of the Manhattan Project.
In 1942, Enrico Fermi made a crucial reappearance through the creation of the Chicago Pile 1. With colleagues from the University of Chicago, Fermi achieved the first controlled nuclear chain reaction. In this process, the splitting of a uranium atom releases huge amounts of energy, as well as more neutrons, which will in turn split atoms all around. In a bomb, this process will become uncontrolled, causing a massive explosion.
The Manhattan Project began in 1942 and was essentially the testing and eventually the creation of the two first nuclear bombs, nicknamed Little Boy and Fat Man. Several European scientists oversaw the development of the weapons, and Vannevar Bush was the head of the program.
The nuclear bomb was quite a controversial matter, though, because even some of the physicists involved in its creation disagreed with the idea that it should be used in warfare. For example, Albert Einstein strongly opposed that concept. In one of his letters to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, written August 2, 1939, he urged the president to consider the potential dangers involved with the nuclear bomb. He writes, "A single bomb of this type, carried by a boat and exploded in the port, might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory." Of course, he didn't know at the time that that was quite an understatement. After years of work and the passing of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the atomic bomb Little Boy is finally created. It is loaded onto a B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay, and it is ready to be dropped on Hiroshima in an attempt to cripple Japan.
dropping of the second bomb on Nagasaki effectively forced Japan into surrender. Japan's surrender meant that the world could finally turn the page to a chapter free of the burden of the Second World War. But the United States' possession of such immense power will soon create new tensions in this world. After World War II, Europe is left in ruins and is thus no longer the economic center of the world. It is now the US and Soviet Union, the US being a nuclear power monopoly and the Soviet Union having the strongest military in the world. That will become the bipolar center of the world.
After the creation of the United Nations in 1945, the five victors of World War II tried to settle on specific rules concerning the possession of nuclear weapons. Americans wanted to see the creation of an atomic development authority which would have complete control over worldwide atomic energy developments. This was practical for the US because it had already acquired the nuclear bomb technology, and this plan would stall the Soviet nuclear plan until details were sorted out.
Soviet Russia rejected the plan proposed by the US as it would keep them from surpassing the nuclear monopoly the US obtained during World War II. The USSR made its own proposal in which the UN would call for a universal nuclear disarmament. In effect, the US would be stripped of its nuclear power and the USSR would regain its military superiority.
Though these instabilities were minor in the beginning, they will lead into 50 years of conflict which the world will suffer from. Starting with the occupation of Berlin, these tensions will eventually lead into the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War.
On August 29, 1949, the USSR tested their first atomic bomb. Shortly after the arrival of this news to the US in 1950, President Truman announced that the development of the hydrogen bomb, a bomb even more destructive than the ones previously constructed, was to be continued. This was the beginning of a long race for better weaponry that we can still observe today in rising tensions between countries such as the US, Iran, and North Korea.
The end of World War II brought forward a new era in Japanese economy. Japan diverted its investments in military to focus on economy building instead. Today, Japan limits its military budget to around 1% of its gross national product and has no nuclear weapons. Instead, Japan is the second industrial power and is one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world. Thus, we can say that the discovery of nuclear power led to massive changes in Japanese economy, society, and relationship with the world.
Though since its creation, nuclear power had been used for destruction, in 1958 the U.S. government's Argonne National Laboratory, operated in Illinois by the University of Chicago, announced plans to commercialize nuclear power to produce electricity for consumer use. In 1954, the United States passed the Atomic Energy Act, which allowed the Atomic Energy Commission to license private companies to use nuclear materials and also to build and operate nuclear power plants.
In 1957, the International Atomic Energy Agency was formed. At first, it began with 18 countries, and today it has over 130. Today, nuclear energy makes up around 20% of the United States' total energy and around 6% of world energy.
Through the invention of nuclear power, the United States demonstrated its strength to the rest of the world and completely changed the basis of war for the rest of eternity. In addition to this, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki effectively ended one of the most destructive wars in the history of time. The end of World War II saved thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives across the globe, which would have otherwise been spared for the continuation of war. The creation of nuclear power also provided humans with a clean, efficient form of energy that reduced pollution and economized the use of fossil fuels.
Due to the innovative and extremely powerful nature of nuclear bombs, many countries desired to acquire them. The race for arms began after World War II and is still extremely apparent today between countries like USA, North Korea, and Iran. As this turning point has proven to be a massive one throughout recent history, we can expect it to continue to bestow its changes upon humanity.